Kei aku nui, kei aku rahi, e te ti, e te tā, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou katoa. Ka huri o ku mihi aroha ki ngā kaiako, huri no i te motu, e ngā kaimahi hoki o ako pānuku, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou hoki. Tēnā koutou, thank you for having me as a, I guess, as a guest presenter for this hui atu. I'm going to be talking about my doctorate research that I completed at 2019 from the University of Otago. It was mainly around the learning experiences, motivations, and attitudes of non-Māori high school students learning Te Reo Māori. So the title of this particular presentation are Non-Māori Students, the Future of Te Reo Māori. And we'll have a little bit of a kōrero about that today. So I'm really excited to, I guess, be here with you all today. Ko tōku pepeha, he uri tēnei no te tai tokerau, ko whangarei te ringa parawa te moana, ko ngarara tūnō te marae, ko manaia te maunga, ko pohi te rangatira, ko ngā puhi te iwi. I worked as a secondary school teacher for 11 years, so I taught a range of subjects, te reo Japanese, and I'm also elected to Auckland Council. I'm out here in West Auckland, so I represent the Henderson Massey ward. So if you know West Auckland, it goes from Westgate to just before Kelston and everything in between. So roughly around 127 people in my particular ward area. And I love working with the community. And I also work for Comet Auckland, which is Auckland Council's education arm. So really happy to be here with you all today. Kia ora. So let's look at the sort of goals for Te Reo Māori. And so the very first sentence of my research says that all New Zealanders play an important role in the revitalisation of Te Reo Māori. So Te Taurewhiri, the Māori Language Commission, has this one major audacious goal of 1 million conversational speakers by 2040. And I just strongly believe that if we're doing what we're doing at the moment, we're not going to reach that target. The progress is a little bit slower than I would hope for it to be. And so I want to look at ways on how to really push that. Te Reo Māori can only thrive if we all play in our part. That includes tauiwi. I have the core belief that Te Reo Māori should be a mandatory subject to Year 10. That's also what Comet Auckland, my current workplace, also pushes for. And actually, we should really look at opportunities for all our tamariki to to learn minimum of 3 languages. So obviously English and Te Reo Māori, but an additional language. And actually, when 80% of the world's population is multilingual, and Aotearoa, we've used our isolation as quite an excuse for not wanting to learn an additional language. And so I think with with technology, the advancement of technology, we can really push that idea of the importance of additional language learning. And my hope, and I'll share a bit about it with you all today, is that how do we grow Te Reo Māori as a strong community language? How do we get it outside of the classroom, outside of, I guess, the marae, and how do we really push it into our community centres, our parks, our playgrounds, our streets, our shopping malls, to make it a language that we can see, that we can hear, that we can feel, that we can read, regardless of where we go in our community. So that's the really big goal. And I'll share a little bit more about that with you all today. So some of the mahi that I've been doing with the Kahui Ako Manu Rewa, and I'm really see this as an opportunity to really push Te Reo Māori. So most of the kaiako here has a strong understanding of what kahui. The purpose of Kahui Ako was to come, is to come together, share resources, and really work in collaboration. And so what I noticed, I think just before the establishment of Kahui Ako, was that a a lot of the schools, so you've got maybe sometimes two or three primary schools in the Kahui Ako, they had no idea what each school was doing in terms of the teaching of Te Reo Māori. Um, and just with my previous background, I had to teach level 1, level 2 of the curriculum at year 9 again. And I know many other kaiako Te Reo Māori does the same. And that's problematic when you've got other subjects who start at level 4 of the curriculum at year 9. And so I'm not sure about other kura, but for example, the school that I taught at had, taught Te Reo Māori for half a year in year 9. Sometimes in other schools it's 5 weeks. And so in preparation for NCA Te Reo Māori, for example, you have, as kaiako, had to sort of push 5 to 6 curriculum levels within a year and a half time frame, and that's unfair for the kaiako, but it's really unfair for the students as well. And so my idea was that why not we come up with a solution to that issue of actually schools within the Kahui Ako actually sharing resources, actually working with each other on how we best support the teaching and learning of Te Reo Māori, so that when they reach that particular high school, that high school can start at level 3, can start at level 4 of the curriculum. And so I have started working with the Kahui Ako Manurewa at the beginning of this year. And the idea was to get them all in the room, which I did. And basically, I got them into groups. So one group year 1 and 2, one group year 3 and 4, one group year 5 and 6, one group 7 and 8, and then 9 to 13. And I put the different, so we had Te Reo Māori teachers, we had teachers interested in Māori language, we had senior management actually sit within groups. What do we currently teach? How do we want to teach? And what resources do we need? And this is really important too regarding the compulsory New Zealand language teaching from next year onwards. Is that how do you also incorporate Māori, local Māori history within that Te Reo Māori component? And that was really cool to see, because there was some really important learnings from that particular workshop that teachers were surprised, like wow, actually, when we look at it, we don't go beyond level 1 of the curriculum. And that you've got schools that are like 500 meters apart, yet don't have an understanding of each other's Te Reo Māori program. So got them together, and we looked at what support they needed, and the next step after that is actually get whānau input. So what are the views of whānau in terms of what aspirations do they have for their tamariki in terms of the learning of Te Reo Māori within the classroom? And the idea is to get teacher input, whānau input, and actually to come up with a real positive strategy in 2022. Because I felt when the implementation of Kahui Ako came about, I think maybe 2016, 17 perhaps, there wasn't an emphasis on Te Reo Māori, and there has to be. And I really encourage other Kahui Ako to look at their particular programs. So I'm going to put my council portrait on. So naturalizing Te Reo Māori, and I said this before, a language that can be seen, read, felt, and you can listen to within the community. So back in 2013-14, I pushed for Te Reo Māori announcements on our public transport, and as a result, we have that on our trains here in Tamaki Makaurau, which is really important because you're giving access to Te Reo Māori for our tamariki outside of the classroom and the community. What we've been doing in the community as well, if you look at that Pikitia Tahurangi Crumb Park, is that the council has been working alongside mana whenua. So Te Kawarawa Maki and Ngāti Whātua Kaipara, for example, and they have come up with, they gave us 160 Māori names that were important to them, that important stories for them, And so we have renamed streets, parks, reserves, community centres. So that picture says Tahurangi Crown Park. So for that particular park, that's got a dual name. Some have just been given just monolingual Māori names, and that the idea for that is to really again push Te Reo Māori as a community as a community language. So it's really important that everyone has the ability to read and see Te Reo Māori, and I'm excited about that particular project. And we know the history of what happened to our previous Māori names and how English names were forced upon Māori names, and we got rid of that beautiful Māori history. So the idea of this program, which is called the Te Kete Rukuruku program, is to bring back the Māori names to the forefront again. So going back to my kaupapa, I really wanted to study the experiences of non-Māori high school students. So I looked at the literature and there was no research on that. So I found research with primary school kids and adult non-Māori learning Te Reo Māori, but nothing specifically focused on high school students. And in my experiences, I saw non-Māori students actually coming through to year 13. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. I sort of knew why Māori kids were learning Te Reo Māori. They would tell me, it's part of their culture, it's part of their heritage. As Māori, it's important for them to have an understanding of the reo of our tupuna, but it wasn't so clear for non-Māori kids. And so I saw this Pākehā student of mine. He had multiple disabilities, and in 2015, he really inspired me to want to know more about the reasons why non-Māori high school students were picking Te Reo Māori. At my school, a language was only compulsory at year 9, so 4 languages, and yeah, it was really cool to see. And I guess for me, this is a koha to support the ongoing revitalization of Te Reo Māori.
Noho muna ana ki muri he taonga ke atu.
Aaron Gardner tōku ingoa, ko Ngāti Pā ki ha tōku iwi.
He tauira a Gardner ki te kura tuarua o Rutherford, kua pāngia ia e te mate cerebral palsy me te mate autism. Heoi e kore rawa tērā e aukati I tana hiakai ki te reo Māori.
Māori, he tino, nā kau nui kia, ko te tino a tāua te reo.
He ai kia Wiremu Flavell te kaiako reo Māori o te kura, kei taumata Kea Gardner I roto I ana mahi kura, ana mahi whakawhanaungatanga anō.
Ko Aaron Gardner tētahi o ngā tauira, iara, haere ki ona kaiako, ki ona hoa kura, kōrero Māori, aki tō tātou reo, me tō tātou tikanga, nā reira he tino tauira mo te kura, mo te hapori anō hoki.
Rua te kau te pakeke o Gardner, hei te whiringa ānuku ka rua te kau mātahi, te tau ea hei ai te hunga haua ki te wehe I te kura. Rā hoki tana whainga, mo tana wehenga atu.
Ki te haere ki te whare wanganga o Awanui Arangi ki te ako matauranga Māori mea PhD in Māori Studies. Ki te mahi kaiako āwhina I roto I te kura o Wani Waititi o te kura o Māori Immersion.
He awhi hoki I te hunga haua pēnā ia anō ki te whai I te huara.
So yeah, that was Aaron. So what came from the research? So whānau support was really key. That these students told me that it was because of the positive attitudes from their parents that really motivated them to wanting to learn Te Reo Māori. And that support was really instrumental for them to carry on learning Te Reo Māori to year 13. Positive relationships with Māori peers. They told me that they felt the classroom was a whānau environment, and that because they had really positive relationships with Māori peers within that classroom, that allowed them to carry on learning Te Reo Māori. They talked about the importance of a strong understanding of Te Ao Māori, and they got it from this particular class. You know, how Te Ao Māori is fundamental to the identity of Aotearoa New Zealand, and so they really talked about that. Learning experiences on the school marae was key for them as well. So these kids, because they don't belong to an iwi or an hapu, they, you know, the school marae wasn't for them. They don't have an external marae, and so the real learning happens on the marae. And I saw some really cool quotes they told me. Like one of the girls said that Pākehā girls told me that, you know, it was really important that they manaki tikanga on the marae, and I thought, wow, that's a really cool kōrero to say. They talked about the New Zealand land wars as a key component of the New Zealand curriculum. So even before in 2019, when the Labour government announced, compulsory New Zealand history, they talked about actually how it should be, you know, New Zealand history should be compulsory, and I'll talk a little bit more about that after. Most of them believe that Te Reo Māori should be compulsory, that if English is compulsory, if social sciences is compulsory, if physical education is compulsory, why isn't Te Reo Māori compulsory? Because what they believe is that when you make a subject compulsory, you're actually saying this is an important subject to learn. This is what the New Zealand Ministry of Education deemed to be important, hence why Te Reo Māori should be compulsory. They also acknowledged other kaiako within the school, including the principal, using Te Reo Māori in the classroom. So actually, when kaiako are using Te Reo Māori in the classroom, they automatically believe it's for the Māori kids, but actually, non-Māori kids learning Te Reo Māori, it's important for them as well. So I used photo voice for my research. So basically, I got kids to take photos of their experiences, and I printed out those photos. And when I did my interviews, we talked about those particular photos. So quickly on the left-hand side, rangiriri. So one of the girls said it was the first time learning about New Zealand land wars, and that I took a Year 12 Te Reo Māori class to do so. It is not the Te Reo Māori teacher's responsibility to teach about land wars. And it was really interesting to hear that their first experience learning about New Zealand land wars had to be in the senior Te Reo Māori class. I like that she talked about issues around the importance of whenua, the kingitanga, and these were really important learnings for her and her fellow classmates. I talked about the importance of parents. If we look at that photo at the top, parents play an important role. When the parents have positive attitudes of Te Ao Māori or Māoritanga, it actually goes, it trickles down to the tamariki. So that was really, really inspiring to see. And just that last picture, the school marae, how all the important learnings happens on the marae. So for example, when there's a pōwhiri, the kids understand their particular roles. They learn how to manaki the manuhiri. They learn about the pūrākau, the stories, local history, the stories behind the whakairo, and how that was important for the kids. Most of the kids took a photo of the school marae, so we saw how important that was for them. Whiua ki te ao, whiua ki te rangi, whiua ki ngā iwi katoa. Kia kaha koutou te reo Māori. And listening to the kōrero about non-Māori learning te reo Māori, and it's been really interesting for Māori Language Week. We saw what the Kai Waiata Lord did in terms of releasing the Te Reo Māori album. I was a big fan of that particular album. We've seen sort of comments around who should have priority for learning Te Reo Māori, Māori or Tauiwi. So if I go back to the original question, non-Māori the future, the answer is they play an important role. Māori should always be at the forefront of the revitalisation of Te Reo Māori, but I strongly believe that Tauiwi play an important supporting role in that. Nō reira e te iwi, tēnā koutou, Tēnā koutou, a tēnā rā koutou katoa, and I'm happy to take questions.